Hey, hey everybody. Hey, it's me again. It's your old pal Mage from Square the Circle Music Channel. That's right. This is kind of creepy. I've seen you guys way too much this week. I've posted probably like 3 times. I hope you're not getting sick of me. I never get sick of you. I never get sick of talking about squares and circles. That's right, we're talking about music. Music tonight. Music appreciation, record collecting, all things under the sun. Um, quick little, obligatory blah, blah, blah. Don't forget to visit my Instagram page, say hello, give me a heart, whatever all that shit is all about. Don't forget to share the link to my channel. Tell your friends, hey, there's this idiot from Oregon that likes records too, and he likes to talk about music. Go check his channel out. Thank you, everybody, for the warm invitation into the vinyl community on YouTube. This has been fun. I guess that's why I'm posting so much more now because I found my I found my crew. I found the people, my peeps. Of course, I always knew that you folks were all on there, and everyone's always been really, really nice. But it was great to have such a warm, extended invitation into, the community. So thanks again to all you folks who have been so welcoming to me, and John Bellamy, and the other guy from the basement. What's your name again? Please forgive me. But yeah, it's been super fun. So thanks again, folks. Um, I've got some stuff I wanted to talk to you about tonight, which is, you know, some extraordinary records. 10 of them, to be exact. I picked out 10 selections from my collection that I wanted to bring up because I probably have maybe brought one or two of them up before, but a lot of them are stuff that hasn't made it onto the channel yet. And secondly, because this is the theme tonight, is just I love this theme. I like to talk about things that are underrated and obscured and things that most people don't talk about very often, and things that are fan fucking tastic that I want to share with everybody because it's such wonderful music and it brings so much joy to my life, and I would hope that it would do the same to other folks. So I will stop jibber jabbering and I will just get right into it. These are 10 albums that I picked out of my collection that I feel are underrated albums that are not talked about, not shown very often. I've never really seen them on people's channels and whatever yada yada. So these are some underrated and or lesser known picks. Starting at number 10 on the list, really cool band I came across, I don't know, a couple 4 or 5 years ago. I started really like listening to a lot of like psychedelic rock and kind of modern day psychedelic rock. A lot of artists on the Sub Pop label are really great at that kind of thing. I've picked up a couple indie labels that I was getting a lot of different artists from, like TP Records. I don't know if you guys have ever heard TP Records, but artists like the Atomic Bitchwax and Nap, and yeah, there's a lot of them. But I started like about 5 6 years ago, really getting into like that kind of garage rock, psych rock, stoner rock, that kind of thing. And so I had kind of a phase there for a few years where I was really like just eating anything up I could. But long-winded, along that old highway, along those roads of like the psych rock, you end up discovering stuff that's like not so drippy stoner desert rock and more kind of just like the crazy tripped out psychedelic pop rock stuff. So that's what these guys are doing. They're really magnificent. They're called Mild High Club. Yeah, funny play on words. Mild High Club. Album's called Timeline. This was released in 2015, I believe. Yep, 2015 on kind of an unknown label I've never heard of. They're called Circle Star. Um, yeah, local boys, West Coast, out of Los Angeles, just crazy, trippy. Well, actually, I think reading about them, this was recorded in LA, and I think a few of the guys are from LA, but I think a lot of them come from Illinois too, from Chicago. Um, so yeah, anyway, like I said, you know, trip pop, psychedelic trip pop. Basically, they're not hard rock by any means, but I'm hard pressed to kind of call them a pop band. Sometimes I know that can kind of have a negative connotation to it. I suppose, because they're not popular. Obviously, I don't know anybody that's ever listened to these guys. Yeah, so I love bringing them up and showing them off. I love the beautiful cover art. Really wild, fun ride. like I said, reminiscent of stuff that you would hear in the last 10 years, like, coming out of the Sub Pop label. Um, so like a little bit more kind of like folk and pop infused rather than the heavy psych sound. Um, Morgan Delt. Anyone ever listen to Morgan Delt? He's psychedelic folk artist, similar to that, but this is kind of more like trippy beat oriented. And lots of just like reverby, echoey, like yeah, you just feel like you're on drugs. It's, if anybody has an issue listening to music that can like warble somewhat out of pitch every now and again because of the synthesizers they're using and like the guitar effects and stuff, it kind of just like bends in and out of reality and in and out of tone and pitch, and it's just kind of like it's an experience, it's a trip, it's a lot of fun, fucking really cool album, kind of unknown, and you know by de facto pretty underrated, I guess. So yeah, everybody check it out. Mild High Club 2015. Okay, next on the list of stuff I feel is kind of underrated or unknown. This would kind of fall more into, again, kind of the unknown category. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are, staunch enthusiasts and people who are, really pumped into the pipeline of this type of music. Kind of underground, unknown, what would be classified as ambient electronica, pseudo contemporary classical, composition for score for film type style. But this is an artist that goes by the moniker Deru, or Deru, however you pronounce it. I'm not exactly sure. Gentleman's true name, Christian name, is Benjamin Wynn, I think. Gwyn? Sorry, I'm not positive about the last name, but I think it's Wynn, like Wynn. Benjamin Wynn goes by the moniker Deru, and this is his album 1979. Concept album, derived, I believe, released in like 2014 as a companion to, or not really a companion to, but just kind of like all in tandem, all together. I guess this dude like um, was shopping around at like secondhand stores or like a flea market or something in LA, and came across this an interesting device that he didn't know what it was, and paid some money for it. It was an antique, and it ended up being this thing called like an oh shit, what's it called? An uh some kind of box, some kind of like weird little like picture box that you would put like slides, like film slides in, but it was like all antique and cool looking, and it worked like a little a screen projector thing, and would like what are those things that we had in the 70s and 80s as kids, like the little viewfinder things. It was basically that, but like made out of wood and glass slides with like all this like old ass photography and all this crazy shit that some random person, it was like just a window into their life, obviously pictures that probably centered around the year 1979, and it was just like super just artistic, super nerdy, artsy fartsy shit, where he had all these screenshots and all this stuff and this whole story about some random person's life and how he it was a window into the man's mind and whatever, just like really kind of eccentric artsy fartsy shit. But I love it, I love this shit, and the music is just, it's so captivating, and it's so it's not really drony, but it's very somber. It's the type of thing, where you're listening to this music, you feel like you're kind of listening to a film score as it progresses, and as it has very moody and very, sets the stage for obviously the companion art that goes along with it. This box thing that I was having a really rough time describing. Um, but yeah, it just goes along in that fashion and just really plays out like you just feel like you're enveloped very cinematically in this story, and it's kind of like you're picturing in your mind, like in every film there's always that um, cut scene where it goes back and someone's like remembering something from their childhood, and it's all very like soft, sad, calliope music of them at the fair, and their dad abandoned them at the fair, and so you're having all these like memories washing back, flashback type scenes from movies. Like that's what the whole album just kind of feels like that. It's really fucking great. It's really great. Anyone that loves kind of that soft pedal sound of the kind of like shoegazy, 80s, lovely like Harold Budd stuff, that I talk about all the time. If you like that type of really moody piano and synth, there's a lot of strings on this. Like I said, it's got that contemporary classical kind of feel, composition for film. So yeah, everyone check this out. It's really intriguing, really cool and eccentric. The music's beautiful. 1979 by the artist Deru. 2014, I believe. And yeah, I have no idea who released this, what label. It might have just been like a totally independent project just by him, the artist who's responsible for the music and everything. So yeah, check that out. Really, really cool. Okay, another one that's really, this one wouldn't go into the underrated category, I don't think, because it gets rave reviews everywhere all the time for being such a inspirational piece of music history. But I just don't ever see it pop up like on anybody's channel. No one ever really talks about it, especially in those avenues like I talk about where people I know that are into the same kind of shit I'm really into, ambient electronic music, stuff like that, especially krautrock and space rock and prog rock and stuff like that. Like love that shit. I'm really huge into it, and a lot of the folks that I have correspondence with through this channel are also into the same thing. And no one's really ever talked about this or shown it, so it has to be on my list of kind of underappreciated, I guess you could say, underappreciated albums. This is the album New, by, of course, kind of space rock, krautrock pioneers. Yeah, it's just their self-titled first eponymous release, New, German for new. Yeah, based out of Dusseldorf, I believe, Dusseldorf, Germany, and they were founding members of Kraftwerk, and they left Kraftwerk. I can't remember their names. Really cool German names, but they were founding brethren in the Kraftwerk group, and they left to pursue their own ideas and their own career, and it turned out to be something really, really fantastic. As basically, pioneers of the krautrock genre and the whole Berlin school sound, and it's just c'est magnifique. It's amazing. It's far more experimental and kind of more prog rock oriented than being kind of the classic what you would expect out of something in the krautrock genre, being very synth heavy and lots of those like arpeggiating sounds and drum machines and like what you hear from like Kraftwerk and stuff like that. This is a departure from that, and I really appreciate and love that these guys, like, they wanted to do shit that was kind of more psychedelic rock oriented, and so that's what you have. It really doesn't fit into, people will call it an electronic album, like it's an electronic music album, and I don't fully agree with that. I consider it to be more of kind of an experimental and psychedelic rock record, with lots of great synthesizer on it, but primarily it being, I feel more of like it's just kind of a psych rock, experimental rock record. So yeah, just like I said, a really beautiful piece of history, experimental rock, electronic mastery by this band New, inspired, some of the very greats. People will say that this was hugely responsible in the formative years, the salad years, so to speak, of like, the no wave and punk rock scene. Like artists such as the great Brian Eno says this is probably one of his biggest inspirations when all the stuff he was doing in Roxy Music, and then even into his solo career. Yeah, he said this was hugely inspirational for him, this specific album. So yeah, everybody check these out. They did a series of these albums, at least 2 or 3 of them, I believe, and they were all just titled, New and New 2 and New 3, I think. But yeah, really fantastic album. Very fun listen. takes you to lots of really fantastic places. I'm not positive, but it is entirely instrumental, right? I don't believe there's any real vocalizations on this. There might be some actual vocalizations, but no real lyrics of any type, I don't think. Um, from what I recall of listening to this album, I've listened to it quite a bit. I don't really remember any singing on it at all. So, but yeah, fantastic, underrated, not really talked about very often, really. So there's that. That would be number 8 on my list of 10. We're cruising right along. Thanks again for joining me, everyone. Here's an oldie. I don't really bring up a lot of older music very often. I talk a lot about a lot of new music most of the time. So let's take it back. Let's take it back a couple of decades, shall we? A lot of decades, all the way back to 1967, and some of the very early days of rock and roll. I wouldn't say very early days, but you know, when rock and roll was really taking on its true form, its true modern day form of what we still see today. And these guys, of course, hugely responsible for a lot of it. And just how magnificent we love them to death. The legendary Everly Brothers, Don and Phil Everly. I mean, everybody that's basically age 65 and up, even into my generation, you know, knows and loves the power of the Everly Brothers, and they're just incredibly inspirational, beautiful singing voices, the way they could harmonize together, everything they were doing to, you know, push the boundaries of what started as kind of country and folk music and then turned into kind of country folk rock. And then by the time 1967 came around, like, they were just motherfucking, like, they were rock stars. This album is a rock album. It is fucking so good. And of course, like everyone of that era, and still to this day, everyone pulls bits and pieces from here and there. And of course, you know, especially of this generation and in this point in time in the music industry, everyone knows and understands that there was a lot of ripping off of, you know, black musicians and black artists of that era and prior to that era, and still to today. But you know, lots of sharing going on of music. And, you know, I don't really want to go as far as to say, you know, or accuse the Everly Brothers of really, like, stealing or ripping off or, you know, stealing thunder or taking away from, you know, black culture and you know, the black music community back then. But, you know, they were in their own right fucking badass. They were really great, vocally speaking, what they could do and how they could sing. And their guitar playing, they were fantastic guitar players, and their backing band, especially in this album, was really fucking great, just amazing. It wasn't all for this one specific album, because this is a collection. This is, you know, just a collection of some of their greatest hits. So I don't believe it was all the same band, all for the same session. You know, this was a, you know, picked and pulled for some of their greatest hits. But yeah, the hit sound of the Everly Brothers. They cover all, like, the classic, like, a lot of, you know, beautiful, wonderful soul and, you know, blues and, you know, all that great, you know, black history, you know, soul music. It's just phenomenal. The B-side fucking kills me every single time. This is like one of the best B-sides ever. Starting out with the song "I'd Be a Legend in My Time," pretty fantastic, but then immediately into track 2, a song called "Let's Go Get Stoned." It's for 1967 too. I mean, like, you could tell they were picking up a lot of inspiration from, like, you know, the Beatles and all of, you know, everything that was going on over the UK, but also a lot of really cool, great stuff that was going on in America with, you know, the hippie movement and all that shit. But this was just, like, super bluesy, awesome, taking a really cool spin on a classic tune by Ray Charles. Ray Charles wrote this tune. It's a magnificent song. Anybody that has never heard that song by them, "Let's Go Get Stoned," like I said, originally written and performed by Ray Charles, and they do it justice. And then right into a song called "Sticks and Stones" that's just equally as just, you know, jaw-dropping, just like I said, classic blues, soul, that they really they embody it quite well. They really do it justice. I fucking love the Everly Brothers. I grew up with them just like everybody else did. They're magnificent. And this, out of all their collection albums and all the stuff they did throughout their just gigantic career, this is just one of the best of the best collections I've ever found. I love the stark black and white photo of them. They look so great, such handsome devils, and just the song picks for this collection are just, it's got, their classic Blueberry Hill, House of the Rising Sun. Like, holy shit, I mean, the only thing this doesn't have is Kathy's Clown, basically, which, was probably their most popular song. Besides Wake Up Little Susie. Oh, Wake Up Little Susie's not on this. Anyway, yeah, this has got some more of the kind of gut wrenching, you know, deep, deep seated, emotional and spiritual type songs on it. So everybody, you should be able to find this. It's pretty easy to find. And if you want a clean copy, you're still going to pay a little bit of money, but it's definitely worth the money. So that's a really kind of classic and I guess more just kind of not underrated, but just kind of I don't know, unknown. I've never really seen anyone talk about that specific album. I'm sure there's plenty of channels out there and people that have discussed the Everly Brothers, but that one specifically is my favorite collection of theirs. So there's that. Keeping it real, keeping it psychedelic, keeping it in the same period in history, going up to 1972, right? Pretty sure this was 1972. This is one that just, like I said, not underrated, but just doesn't get talked about enough. It should be talked about more, and it should be considered one of their, I don't know, all their albums are so monumentally fan-fucking-tastic, but this one just doesn't get a lot of praise. 1972's Obscured by Clouds by Pink Floyd. Yeah, it's a soundtrack to an art film. I think it's a French film called The Valley, right? La Vallée. Yeah, hippie film. But yeah, they roped in Pink Floyd and got Pink Floyd to do the soundtrack, or I don't know how it worked out. If Pink Floyd was asked by the director if they had some music that he could use, or whatever, if maybe they were commissioned to actually, do the music for the film that was maybe already created. I don't know. All I know is the movie's fucking really weird. I've only tried to watch it for 5 or 10 minutes one time in my life, years and years and years ago, so I couldn't really tell you much about it. But this music, the music on this album is really, really fucking amazing. I never hear anybody talk about it at all. It's some of the best work they were doing in the early 70s. Up there with this is metal days, and it's reminiscent of what they were trying to achieve in that era. Songs toward the end of the A side, I mean, What's the Deal? Really charming, cool, wonderful song that has a great melody, great just kind of shuffling along kind of groove. And then the last song on the A side is the Mudmen track. Dun, 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 kind of that primal, kind of cool rock and roll groove. More on the B sides, just still, it's so ingenuitive and cool. There's a lot of writing going on by, I guess Richard Wright probably wrote most of this music, didn't he? I think they kind of credited Richard Wright and Roger Waters basically of just writing all this music, and you can tell it doesn't always sound like a Pink Floyd record, and I think that's why I like it so much. It's really, there's a lot more kind of psychedelic hippie influences in this. It almost at points kind of sounds like you're listening to a Grateful Dead record. Yeah, especially on the ones where Richard Wright sings. Third song on the second side called Stay, written by Richard Wright, and yeah, he sings the whole song, and that's what I mean, you know what I mean? So it doesn't sound like a standard Pink Floyd record. I think that's why I like it so much, and it's really ingenuitive and fucking cool. It doesn't get enough praise. It doesn't get talked about enough. It's up there in my opinion as one of their greatest works. So yeah, if any of you nerds or nerdettes or whatever you call yourselves likes Pink Floyd and you've never listened to Obscured by Clouds, you better get on it. Get on that shit. Moving along, new decade, new feeling, new sound. Um, this is a cool record. I discovered these guys. I don't know, I remember them from my childhood. I remember them being on the radio. I remember liking this type of music. This was kind of like music that inspired a lot of what was going on in the early 90s when I really came into myself as far as like knowing what I liked and being part of a scene or whatever. Um, but these guys were more early 80s, and so they were inspiring a lot of that really early on 80s to 90s shit that became like the alt rock sound. You can tell they're huge inspirations for like the band REM. A lot of what U2 was kind of doing in that era of the mid to late 80s into the 90s, and the production value primarily I speak of too, like just kind of like knowing what they're trying to achieve and achieving that sound. This was a really, I don't want to say overproduced, but it's really clean and it's really, it's very just kind of immersive. It's a very immersive record. This is a group called Talk Talk. I'm sure you guys have all heard of Talk Talk, huge in the 80s. I believe this album was released originally in 1984. And yeah, it's just called The Color of Spring. Beautiful artwork. Very simplistic in what they do, but achieves so much complexity somehow at the same time. And like I said, it's like the type of album you could really just sonically, like you can just wash yourself in this album. It's really immersive. So like I get those kind of feelings of the really overproduced stuff that started coming out of into the 90s where, I don't know, these guys were just getting really good at the studio art of it all, and just all these great fully immersive sounds that you're just kind of dripping in. And I mean, just no better than the opening track, Happiness is Easy. I think that was a radio hit for them. Happiness is Easy, and you just got these big booming like cavernous drum sounds and all the great guitar effects and the cool, he's playing a slide bass, and he's doing all these really awesome sliding up and down and just making it like super atmospheric. Every time he pulls up and off, he's like right on time. These guys are just really excellent musicians. You should see the list of musicians in here. I believe in the inner notes. Yeah, it lays out every song, and in every single song, there's a list of 10 fucking individuals, and there's different people in every single song. And one of the only ones that is static, that just stays the same all the time, is, of course, the lead singer guy. Mark Hollis is his name. Really interesting set of pipes on this guy, and that's kind of what initially made me gravitate toward this sound and this group, and especially this album. He's got such a unique, odd voice, and I kind of like that. I like that about my music, when things are so unique and so different, where you're like, at first it's kind of abrasive, but then you're like, man, no, I really kind of like that. With my friend that I've brought onto the channel before, and we've had discussions about the music that we love, we've talked about this before. And we talked about his love for all artists, those male kind of like crooning style singers, those type of artists. My buddy Nick, he really loves Arctic Monkeys, and the gentleman that sings for that band, and how his singing style. And he's a big fan of Smiths and Morrissey and stuff like that, and just all that kind of stuff in that vein, which I really dig too. But that's what I immediately kind of associate this with. He's just got that real interesting vibrato. It's a very kind of, he's got, I want to say kind of like he sings down the back of his throat, but he's got like a baritone voice. So he's doing it kind of naturally, where he gets just this interesting throat voice, and it's sometimes nasally. I likened it, I think initially I likened it to like Morrissey mixed with the Cowardly Lion. I don't know why I said that, but just the way in The Wizard of Oz, that character, the way he talks all up in his head, and he's kind of nasally in parts when he's growling and stuff, that just kind of reminds me of the guy's singing style. Sorry, kind of a stupid analogy. But anyway, I love the shit out of this band. This is just chock full of wonderful, beautiful tunes. Um, the first three tracks alone are worth buying the album. I mentioned the Happiness is Easy song, which is a great album opener. And then a really kind of sad and dark tune to kind of, I don't want to say dampen the mood or darken the mood, but because it doesn't really do that. It's just a very realistic and a very, I don't know, it's a tragic tune. It's called I Don't Believe in You. Um, yeah, I don't need to talk about the subject matter, I guess. Um, and then the third song, which really kind of brings you back up out of that mire, um, song called Life's What You Make It. What a cool fucking track. This track is kind of what I was, a song that is kind of like instrumental in the making of what I really liked as, youth growing up. And the type of shit I was into. It's a song that's just like really rhythmically challenging and cool. All the guitar work and the bass work that's going on. There's lots of really cool acoustic piano, chiming notes. It's very, like I said, it's very rhythmic and cool. Um, Life's what you make it. I don't know. Cool. It reminds me of stuff that I was listening to like in the early 90s, Dave Matthews Band, stuff like that. Really cool. Anyway, everybody check out Talk Talk. Yeah, their album Color of Spring, I believe 1984. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Again, in that vein of, stuff that was, really kind of attributing and responsible for the makings of like alternative rock, progressing from like that early 80s sound, and then it made that alt rock in the late 80s, and then throughout the late 80s just continuing this cool metamorphosis into what alternative rock became in the 90s. And these guys just epitomize what alternative rock, especially here in the Northwest, that sound of what these guys are achieving. I mean, they kind of, in a sense, kind of created the genre. This is the album Built to Spill. Originally they hail out of Idaho, I believe. Not Boise, but somewhere nearby. I think Idaho Falls or something like that. Twin Falls, Idaho. Anyway, Doug Marsh, mastermind, singer, songwriter, guitar player extraordinaire. It's basically his project. He's had many different members come and go. This was kind of the later period of the first faction of his band. I believe this album was released in 2001, but kind of noted for being one of the more popular albums for them that kind of brought them into the public eye a little bit. I don't think they really ever got a radio song, never had a hit single or anything like that, but this is when people really started paying attention, and they really started getting a lot of being noticed, in college towns and on college radio, and maybe did some work for film, maybe some, soundtrack, couple songs picked for a soundtrack here or there, sort of thing. But fuck, I mean, they've played my hometown here in, Springfield, Eugene, Oregon. I mean, at least 10 times that I can count since 1998 when I discovered them. I've seen them at least 3 times just here in Eugene. I think I saw them in Portland too. I saw them in Portland sometime in the early 2000s, but yeah, I don't know. I guess they're really not underrated. They're definitely not unknown, but this is an album that I feel just doesn't really get talked about very much. They have another popular album called Keep It Like a Secret. I think that was from probably a little bit earlier, probably right around 97, 98. That one's a lot more popular. People talk about that one a lot, and it gets a lot of notoriety. It's a really fucking great album, but I don't know. I think I like this one better. A lot more refined, a lot more kind of just with there's a method, more of a method here. Their earlier albums feel more kind of just like experimental, alternative, kind of punk rock, kind of not winging it, but just a little bit more loose. This album's not loose at all. This album's form fitted, well produced, very well produced. I believe by the very famous Phil Ek. Phil Ek did all their albums in the early days, but He's, notoriously associated with Sub Pop Records and with a few other small um, indie record labels all throughout the Northwest, especially in Washington State. But yeah, love the shit out of these guys. Everyone needs Built to Spill in their life. Ancient Melodies of the Future. Really cool. Beautiful artwork. There's the man, Doug Marsh, right there with his guitar. Um, Fan-fucking-tastic album. Everybody needs this in their collection. So just wanted to show it off. Yep. Again, kind of keeping with that theme and progressing linear fashion here, going down a timeline, so to speak. Sticking around to the Northwest sound. Of course, one of the most, if not the most, famous denizen of the Northwest. The infamous, the very divisive Pearl Jam. This is Pearl Jam's probably, I want to say, 7th full-length release, somewhere in there, 7th or 8th full-length LP. They released, I believe, sometime around 2000. I want to say 2004. Sorry, 2002. It's called Riot Act, 2002, by Pearl Jam. Very, very underrated. One of their more underrated albums, if not the most underrated album. I would say their 1994 release, or excuse me, 1995 release, No Code, is probably their most underrated album. People talk a lot of shit about that album. It's so fucking good. But this one is similar. I mean, anyway, like I said, divisive. Lot of hate for Pearl Jam, always has been, and it's magnified even more so in the last, in the last decade, really, but especially in the last few months, just because, Ed Vedder is constantly in the media, and he's constantly just getting under everybody's skin, which I totally understand. I'm a lifelong Pearl Jam fan, always have been. Ever since they fucking hit this, ever since they, first time I ever heard them, first time they hit the scene in '91. I was an immediate super fan. I wouldn't say super fan, but I'm not one of those creepy people. Anyway, I love the shit out of them, and I have all their albums, well, practically all their albums. Eddie Vedder is just kind of going the way of the Bono. He's going the way of the Bono, where he's just become almost just kind of a more reviled figure than he is, or than he was, when he was the heartthrob of the 90s. But it's this album specifically, like I said, called Riot Act, 2002, super underrated, very underappreciated, a huge list of amazing, amazing songs. This was not the first album with Matt Cameron, their drummer as of late. He's been in the band now for, probably 20 years now. I think he joined the band in 2001, or in 2000, excuse me. The album Binaural, that was Matt Cameron's first album with the band, and immediately was just like he belonged in the band, and just made the band so much more energetic, and just rejuvenated the band, which they needed, because they'd been alive for 10 years, and it's usually most bands after 10 years, it's kind of like, bye-bye, game over, but yeah, like I said, Matt Cameron really rejuvenated that band. This was the second album with them, and he had already begun to do songwriting for them, and backup vocals, and just like I said, totally reinvented the band. He is responsible for at least 2-3 tracks on this. I know that numerous other band members, of course, Jeff Ament, the bass player, Mike McCready, their lead guitarist, and Stone Gossard is a huge songwriter too. They all write songs, and they all contribute. This isn't the Eddie Vedder band. They are not the Eddie Vedder band, and that's probably why a lot of people get mildly impatient, just kind of don't want to sit through another Pearl Jam record, is because they're like, oh, it's just the Eddie Vedder band. It's like, man, listen a little bit deeper. Listen to the songs. Listen to how different all of their songs are, and how intriguing and cool. And it's like, yeah, Homeboy sings primarily all their songs, but it's not his fucking band. They all have a huge part in what's going on. And I guess that's probably another thing that can turn people off about them, is because every song is so different in its own weird way. And you're getting Stone Gossard's writing style on a lot of the songs, and it's totally different. It's totally different than Vedder's writing style. Um, but yeah, I could talk about Pearl Jam for a fucking hour. But this album, especially, Riot Act, very underrated. Doesn't get talked about hardly ever. It's got just enormous songs on it. Love Boat Captain is a famous song. I Am Mine is another very famous song. I think maybe that was picked up for a soundtrack for a movie at some point in the early 2000s, maybe. I don't know. Green Disease is one of my favorite songs. Help Help, another song written by Jeff Ament, magnificent. A really cool one solely written by Ed Vedder called Bush Leaguer. It's a tongue-in-cheek, really crazy rib jab eye poke to, the presidential, the shit that was going on at the time. This is 2002, 9/11 had just happened. Bush was shit in the bed. Cheney was, had his stranglehold on the world. Yeah, interesting times. This came out at a really interesting time in world history, music history. It's super underappreciated. Love the fuck out of this album. Love the fuck out of this band. The art is beautiful, just like always. They have some of the greatest artwork, and everything. The LPs that they release are always just, they're worth every penny. You got to pay $45 for a Pearl Jam record, but you're always getting your money worth. It's an art presentation. Everything about them. Okay, gonna wind it up here. Gonna wind it down. Wrap it up, I mean. Wrapping it up here, the last couple I wanted to talk to you. Had a guy comment on one of my videos recently in the last few days. We were talking about that fantastic band that I've talked about many times, pardon me, when talking about ambient electronica and how much I love the Texas duo called Stars of the Lid, and how they've just changed my life and busted my head wide open. Such beautiful music. And they, one of the members from Stars of the Lid has a secondary project that he's been involved in the last few years. And a guy mentioned it to me on the channel, and I was like, oh yeah, I've got that album, and I've got it slated to be on an episode here. So now we get to talk about it. This is a duo, again, from Texas. A gentleman, one of them being from that group Stars of the Lid. His name is Brian something or other. But this is his secondary project with another gentleman, and it's called A Winged Victory for the Sullen. A Winged Victory for the Sullen. Self-titled, eponymous record. This was their first, I believe, 2011. Sorry, I have something in my throat. I believe 2011. And they've since released at least a couple more LPs and done some film score work and lots of other things. Kind of just took over where Stars of the Lid kind of just left off. But this one being, I wouldn't say more up my alley, but I don't know. I'm hard pressed to say I like it better than Stars of the Lid. I don't think I do, but it's just slightly different because it's far more in the realm of the contemporary classical. And there is just the other guy besides, I can't remember his name again, sorry, the gentleman from Stars of the Lid, not him, but the other gentleman, he is primarily playing orchestral piano. He's playing concert piano almost through the whole thing. There's lots of additional musicians on here, tons of additional musicians. So we're talking like 2-3 part, violin, viola, a couple cello players, harp player, like really cool, full on deal, like full meal deal. And then of course the beautiful synthesizer works from the other gentleman, and it's just a much more contemporary classical feel to it, with accentuations by synthesizer. So not so synthesizer heavy, equally as cool. So I love the shit out of this. Very reminiscent, taking a page of the book from Roger Eno. Everything Roger Eno was doing in the mid to late 80s and early 90s, very reminiscent of that style. Because you just have the real heavy orchestral symphonic sound, but then just real light musings of synthesizer work. So it's just perfect. This album is just absolutely divine. That's just really all I can say about it. It's just divine. So everybody, if you're remotely into anything, synth, ambient, contemporary, classical, piano centric, uh, this is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. So, a winged victory for the Sullen, 2011, self-titled. Check it. Really great shit. Something flew down my throat. I'm okay. I'm not gonna die. This is the last one on my list. Really excited to talk about this and bring this out. As excited as everything else I've talked about. But this one especially, because this has been a long time coming. This is one of those, like I was mentioning at the very beginning of the video, kind of a holy grail for me. Kind of a big moment finally getting this. I've waited so long. I discovered this album quite literally more than 5 years ago. Pretty much right when it came out. This album came out in 2016, and by the time I caught wind of it and discovered who these guys were, you couldn't get a copy of it anywhere, not even on CD. This is a European, or excuse me, they're an English band, and you can't find copies of it anywhere. I don't know if it's just because they're more of an independent kind of like an indie group, kind of unknown, or if they just didn't press enough and it didn't make it over here into the States well enough, and there was no copies of it anywhere. And the copies that did exist around Europe, like, bought up instantaneously. And if there was like one copy in the entire world on Discogs, there wasn't anything on eBay, there wasn't anything anywhere, and like one would pop up on Discogs, and it'd be gone within 30 seconds, and it would sell for $250. So that's what I mean. It's just kind of like super depressing when that shit happens, because it's like, I really want a hard copy of this, because you know what I mean. We all collect. We all need the copy of that record, and it finally happened. I wasn't paying attention one day, late 2021. They did a repress. They finally did a reissue. It was popular enough, and people were screaming enough, and they had the money, and they did it. And so, super stoked. This is a band called Palace. And this album, amazing, amazing album. It's called So Long Forever. What a masterpiece. You're going to hear everything you love about Radiohead. You're going to hear everything you love about that kind of like early to mid 2000s sound, when bands just started sounding different. Like, remember the first time you heard My Morning Jacket? You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. You're like, what is this? This is really intriguing. This is really cool. That's what I get a lot of. I get a lot of like, musicianship and instrumentations and just what's going on like in the band. You just get a lot of Radiohead influence. Really fucking cool. But then vocally speaking, the guy, he's fantastic, and it's very reminiscent of the guy who sings for My Morning Jacket. Really cool mix. Really fantastic band. Every single song on this album is just a drop you to your knees kind of song. The opening track, Break the Silence. My favorite track on the album is called Bitter. I don't know, either the song Bitter or the song It's Over. There's like 3 songs in a row. Like the whole first side, the A side, is basically just about a relationship just falling the fuck apart. It's really great. But yeah, this whole album, So Long Forever, 2016, by a band called Palace. Yeah, an English band called Palace. The first time I ever saw these guys, I ran across it on YouTube, and I, click on it. I'm listening to this song, and it's just amazing. I love everything about it. And then the singer, you see the band, they're like on a beach or something. They're playing their music, and the singer comes up, and the singer's singing, and he's wearing a Portland Trailblazers hat. And I was like, yeah, buddy, this fucking English band, like cool English band, and he's wearing a Portland, Oregon Trailblazers hat. I thought that was really fucking cool. So yeah, love the shit out of these guys. Everybody check it. They have another release from 2018 or 2019, I believe, and I think they just put out a brand new album in 2021. I think that's kind of what spurred them into like, oh, we better take some old stuff and do another reissue, because we're releasing another album. We have to have a lot of everything. I don't know how the music industry works. I'm talking out my ass. But yeah, Love the shit out of this band. Totally underrated, totally unknown. I never hear anybody, haven't ever heard anybody. Nobody knows who this fucking band is. At least not in my circle. And at least out of none of the people that I ever see or talk to online. So yeah, really wanted to bring that out and highlight it. I've just been like really wanting that album for so fucking long, and they finally reissued it, and I just got a copy of it. It actually just came in the mail just like a couple weeks ago. So it's one of the newest additions to my collection, a holy grail that I've wanted forever. So I'm so happy, so thankful. Thank you all for kicking it with me this evening and being a part of my channel. Please subscribe, please like all my videos. Scroll down on my page and look at some of my old videos. There's lots of cool old content. I've been on YouTube now for almost a year. And yeah, I'm going to keep making videos. And I guess that's all I've got to say. So spin them loud, spin them proud, keep them clean. Call your grandma. Peace be with you.